Okay, we have two different strains uh, of some apparently a bacteria. So, biology. A group of scientists studied the effect of a chemical on various strains of bacteria. Strain A started with 6,000 cells and decreased at a constant rate of 2,000 cells per hour after the chemical was applied. Strain B started with 2,000 cells and decreased at a constant rate of 1,000 cells per hour after the chemical was applied. When will the strains have the same number of cells? Explain. Okay. I think I might solve this whole thing out for you to talk about. Okay. Again, we want to define the variables. So what I'm going to say here to define the variables is um, we are going to say let x equal, oops, let x equal the number of hours, or I can really just say, typically we can say time, and then put in parentheses in hours, since chemical was applied. Okay, and we can then say let y equal population of bacteria. When you say population, what you're saying is, just like humans, um, how many of them are there, okay? So we'll say population of bacteria remaining really in the thing. So how do we set it up? Well, we can say, okay, for strain A, because we're looking for the time when the populations are the same, for strain A, we can say, sorry, choosing the color here, y, the total population, will equal 6,000 cells at the start. We can say 6,000, and then it's decreasing minus 2,000 cells for every hour, like that. Okay. Another way you could write that, if you wanted to write it in slope-intercept form, would be negative 2,000x plus 6,000. Okay, where the 6,000 is the initial population, and the decrease per hour is 2,000, so it's negative. These are equivalent expressions. If you write it like this one, you are keeping it in slope-intercept form, particularly important if you want to graph it and all of that. Okay. Regardless, those are the same. Okay, and then the next equation, we're also going to use y, and okay, forgive the noise. I'm having some students come in now, but so the next equation would be y equals also the population. Now this time for strain B, and we're going to start with 2,000 cells and decrease at a rate of 1,000 per hour. So I'm going to write the decrease of 1,000 per hour as the coefficient of x, and then say, what do we have as our initial population? We have 2,000. Okay? So those will be the two equations that we're going to use. I will use this one and this one. And then we're going to find out when will the strains have the same number of cells. And I'm going to do calculations on the side off. I'm going to do them without recording it, and you'll just see the end result. And then, okay, we're back, and my calculations are small and over here on the right. So I'm going to be using these two equations here that I boxed in red. Y equals negative 2,000x plus 6,000. Start with 6,000, decrease by 2,000 every hour. And this one in purple, y equals negative 1,000x plus 2,000. Start with 2,000, population of 2,000, decrease by 1,000 each hour. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom in on my calculations. Oops, sorry. And talk about what I did. Since they were both equal to y here, and I'm not sure why it does that. Since they were both equal to y here, they are equal to each other. So see how this is equal to y and this is equal to y? So that must be equal to that. Essentially what I did is I took one equation and substituted y with what y was equal in the other equation. So now we've got negative 2000x plus 6000 from this equals negative 1000x plus 2000 from that. Okay? Add 2000 to both sides. We're left with 6000. And this becomes a positive 1000x plus 2000. So subtract that 2000 away, and you get 4000 equals 1000x. Divide by the coefficient, 1000, and you get 4 is equal to x. When I substitute that back into one of the equations, I say x is here, so here's 4. We multiply it out, we get negative 4000 plus 2000, or y is negative 2000. And this is what we get as a result. Now, this is what we're trying to discuss. Okay, what's going on here? They're saying, after how many hours will the populations be the same in both sets of bacteria? Well, it says after 4 hours, both populations will equal negative 2000. Essentially, what it's suggesting is that in order for the graph lines to kind of meet at a point, it's going to meet at a place where if the rates stayed the same, the only way that they would be the same amount is if you were able to somehow go less than 0 for the population. After 4 hours, they would both have negative 2000. That doesn't make sense. You're never going to have less than 0 for the populations. It goes down to 0, and that's it. You can't go negative for population. So they say this is not a viable solution. And what that language means, viable means it's not reasonable, it's not possible. You can't have this as an answer. So because the system solves at a place where they will only become 0 if the rate kept decreasing after you had already gotten to 0 and then kept decreasing after that, that's the only way that you would get them to be the same, and it's not possible to have less than 0. So in this particular case, what you can really say is the strains will never have the same number of cells in them because they run out of, the population runs down to 0 before they ever encounter the same amount in both strains. So that's the answer. And this is a situation of, can you, oops, sorry about that. Can you take a word problem, find a solution, and then look at the solution and see whether it makes sense? In this case, the solution doesn't make sense, so we say, as you see on the bottom, not a viable.